you can't see me, which I don't need because since my breast cancer surgery last year, I feel the cold so much now. Even when it's 15 degrees outside, I'm still cold in the house. And I'm not one for feeling the cold, but this operation that saved my life basically, I just get so cold all the time. It's unbelievable. When I sit in my chair, I've got blankets wrapped around me and, my great big nice stitch hoodie on me, which I would love to do a recording wearing that because I'd be so much warmer. Right. If you can like and subscribe, you're liking for the content and you're liking to give a voice to the voiceless children. This is an old story, but it came up on my feed. Paris Bennett. Now, I have got some news clips to show you, but at the moment I'll just read a brief description and of him. 31st of August, Paris went to prison for murdering his younger sister, Ella. He's now, as of last year, he was 30 years old. His date of birth is the 10th of October, 1993. His full name is Paris Lee Bennett. I'll just see if it gives me a bit more. Might tell me just his past. So Paris Bennett is classed as an American psychopath and murderer. He brutally killed his younger sister when he was only 13 years old. And then he committed the heinous acts of exily abusing her and stabbing her 17 times. But he took full responsibility for his actions and he's now serving time in prison. For those that are new to YouTube channels, we can't say certain words. I know I'm not sort of like being monetized at the moment, so I don't think it really matters, but I think the YouTube people can take down the videos to not to show it. So I've got a couple of videos to play for you and that'll explain it a bit more. I'll do this one first. Where's my StreamYard gone? Share screen. Which one do I want? Is that the one I want? Oh, got so many tabs open. This one, the butterfly one. A minute. Right. Full screen.
No, I know for a fact that she's dead because
do you want to go ahead and try? It might still help, okay?
No, I don't think it'll help. No, I don't think it'll help.
This is 13-year-old Paris Bennett. He is refusing to perform CPR on his 4-year-old sister, Ella. The 911 operator pleads with him to try to save his sister's life. But the real reason the older brother is not cooperating is because he is hiding the most disturbing secret. 5 hours before the 13-year-old called 911, Ella was living a peaceful, happy life with her older brother and their single mother, Charity Bennett. The two siblings were each other's best friends. The big brother was always looking out for his little sister, often watching her while she slept and protecting her with all of his love. The little girl looked up to her big brother and trusted him with all her heart. But on the night of February 4th, 2007, everything changed. That evening, the children's babysitter left early while their mother was still at work, leaving the 4-year-old and the 13-year-old home alone.
That is out of order for a start, especially over night time, because what happened if something caught fire within the house or one of the children suddenly went into a fit or, or burnt themselves or done anything?
And at 11:42 p.m., 911 received the most disturbing call from the big brother.
Is she bleeding anywhere?
Yeah, she's bleeding all over the bed.
As police and medical personnel rushed to the scene, the 911 operator was able to convince the older brother to perform CPR on his sister.
Put your hands on her chest and then blow 2 breaths in her mouth, okay?
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4.
But the problem is, Paris is lying to the operator. He is only pretending to give his little sister CPR.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
The year is 1999. In the quiet town of Abilene, Texas, Charity Lee Bennett is raising her son, 6-year-old Paris Bennett. From an early age, Paris shows signs of being gifted and highly intelligent with an IQ of 141. He
Wow.
excels in school and is adored by his teachers and classmates. To Charity, he is the perfect child, and they are the perfect family. But life hasn't always been easy. Before Paris was even born in 1993, his father suffered a severe psychological breakdown, leaving a young, pregnant Charity to raise a child on her own. Left without a partner by her side and with little support from her own mother, Kyla, Charity stood alone. But instead of breaking, she found courage. She poured everything she had into raising her baby boy, determined to give him the love and stability she never had. In spite of their challenges, things were looking up. Charity and Paris developed a strong, beautiful bond as a family of two. 4 years go by, and now, an unexpected new chapter is about to begin. The family is about to grow, and this time with a new baby sister for Paris. April 12th, 2002, Ella Bennett is born.
And quickly before, because I have not listened to this, but I would imagine he got very jealous of her. And perhaps Mum kept on saying to him, "Can you do this and do that for your little baby sister?" And he just probably got too jealous.
I remember putting Ella in his arms, and he was looking down at her, and I'm like waiting to see what the reaction was going to be. And he had this huge smile on his face, and he said to me, he goes, "Oh, Mama, she's beautiful."
As her kids grow older, Charity can't help but notice the stark differences between her two children. Ella is lively, spunky, social, the kind of child who can light up an entire room. Paris, on the other hand, is more quiet and introverted. He often keeps to himself and enjoys his time alone, with reading and drawing as his hobbies. But beneath his calm and independent nature, Paris beautifully embraces his role as an older brother. He loves his little sister with his whole heart, and the two become inseparable.
Ella absolutely adored Paris. Anything Paris did, Ella had to do. Paris would pick her clothes out every day. He was her fashion consultant, she said.
This is Paris Bennett reporting live. This is Ella's ball reporting live with Ella's ball fit. Suspect of the dirty diaper. Okay, creating dirty diaper. Ella.
Charity, now being a single mom of 2 kids, has even more on her plate. She works 2 jobs waiting tables just to make ends meet. The pressure is high, but her one goal is to do everything she can to give Paris and Ella the best life they deserve. Even with her busy work schedule, she dedicates all of her free time to her kids. Life is good for the small family, but things take a disturbing turn on February 4th, 2007. It's Super Bowl Sunday, an exciting and extremely busy night for sports fans. Charity, who works at a local sports bar, is scheduled to work a double shift to keep up with the large number of customers, so she hires a babysitter to look after the now 13-year-old Paris and 4-year-old Ella. The bar is completely packed, and Charity works hard throughout the evening, with just a few hours left until she can clock out and go back home to her kids. But, suddenly, cops walk into the bar and start asking the staff about Charity.
Around midnight, cops are at the front door. They went to the manager's office. They called my name. They told me that my daughter had been hurt. And I was like, "You need to take me to Ella now."
Charity is in a state of shock. They quickly leave the bar, and police escort her home. Her mind is racing. She attempts to stay calm, still not knowing what happened to her children, and specifically, Ella. Charity tries her best to not imagine.
Sorry about that.
Imagine the worst, but
Sorry.
the cops' serious looks,
I don't
combined
do
with their
that.
unsettling quietness, sends a chill down her spine. As they finally arrive, Charity sees her house is blocked off with caution tape and surrounded.
It must be absolutely awful, and her mind must have been done 10 rounds over to be, see the police call in at your place of work, and then you're asked to go with the police officer, and they obviously not going to say too much in one go, the extent to what's happened, just saying like your child's been injured. She's probably thinking, oh, she's fallen off the chair, fallen off the sofa. But that time of night, they both should have been in bed.
Surrounded by dozens of people.
Police everywhere. news trucks, neighbors. The entire street was lit up.
At that moment, Charity knows something terrible has happened. Unable to be left in the dark for any longer, she pleads with the cops, begging them to just tell her what they seem so afraid to reveal. And that's when her entire world flips upside down. Ella is dead.
Oh, bless.
Charity is at a complete loss as she watches Ella's body being carried out of their family home. The sight is too much to bear.
That is a terrible, terrible sight. Many years ago, try and keep it really short, I lost a 3-month-old baby due to cot death, and seeing them taking my baby out because she had been under the doctor, so she had to have a post-mortem done. But it is terrible when you see your own child being zipped up into a bag and carried out. You know, it does things to your mind.
She was in a body bag. It was zipped up to her chin. She had blood coming out of her mouth. I started screaming that I was sorry, that I wasn't there. They took her away.
You did what you
And then
could
I
do.
just remember just collapsing.
I mean, you got a babysitter to look after your 2 children, to work 2 jobs to pay for your family. So, you know, she shouldn't feel guilty. I know it's easier said than done, but I bet the babysitter feels guilty now for leaving them alone.
After seeing Ella's lifeless body, she finally musters up the courage to turn to the detectives and ask, "Where's my son? What happened to Paris?" They tell her Paris is already at the police station, waiting for her. She lets out a sigh of relief hearing that Paris is alive and well. But as she gets into the police car to go and reunite with her son, something feels off. There's a coldness in the air, anxiously waiting to arrive. Charity's mind is racing with questions. And what's even more disturbing is that deep down, something about this moment feels oddly familiar to Charity. An unnerving feeling history is repeating itself. And that's
Ooh.
because 30 years ago, when Charity was only a child, her family was torn apart by murder.
Wow.
Cobb County, Georgia, 1980. Charity was just 6 years old when her father and mother, James and Kyla, ran a booming trucking empire. They dealt with national shipping and cargo, an industry bringing in billions per year. But behind their seemingly perfect life and success, their marriage was deteriorating. After years of chaos, their volatile relationship ended in divorce, leaving their only child, Charity, caught in the middle of their battles. However, Charity's parents surprisingly reconnected on March 9th, 1980, and decided to fly to Las Vegas, remarrying in a
good.
whirlwind ceremony. For a second, Charity hopes their
Oh,
life would
little
find
puppy.
stability once again, but on March 11th, 1980, less than 3 days after they exchanged their vows, her father, James, was found dead in their family
What?
home.
Oh,
When
that's
authorities arrived on the
crazy.
scene, they noted 3 gunshot wounds to his head, heart, and back. James' murder was clearly a targeted attack, and suspicions immediately fell on the newlywed, Charity's own mother, Kyla. Speculation grew when Kyla's name was put back in James's will after their sudden remarriage, because this meant that if anything happened to him, Kyla would inherit control of the entire company, along with his fortune.
Wow.
Investigators also considered whether his murder was maybe a professional hit tied to organized crime, and from there, the whispers grew louder. Rumors swirled that Kyla had allegedly paid $50,000 to have him executed. Detectives were quick to question her about the murder contract, and
Sorry
Kyla
about that.
admitted she had asked about it, but claimed it was only
It gives you like 3 seconds or 4 seconds to be able to skip the ads. But this is awful for her to go through all this.
out of curiosity. Without any other leads, Kyla quickly became their main suspect, and prosecution spent the next 4 months building a case against her before finally taking her to trial. For 11 days, jurors listened to all the allegations and the evidence, or lack thereof, and the verdict came back as not guilty. Kyla walked out of court a free woman. In the eyes of many, she had
I'm just going to put on my hoodie because I'm really cold here, and I'm determined not to put the heating on when it's 15 outside, I think it's going to be. So carry on listening. I will be back. I'm just going to get my hoodie.
Beaten the odds. The killer was never officially found, and the weapon never recovered. Kyla returned to her life of luxury. Now in complete control of their business empire, she began raising Charity on her own. After her mother's acquittal, Charity grew up haunted by the loss of her father. Everyone around her believed that her own mother was her father's killer, and as much as everyone tried to shield Charity from that possibility, it followed her. Her classmates would taunt her over and over again.
Kids would come up and say, "Oh, I hear your mommy killed your daddy." It was a constant presence in my life.
Meanwhile, at home, Charity felt neglected by her mother. With her father's absence, her mother, Kyla, fell into a lavish and reckless lifestyle, drinking and doing drugs, all while running the family business, leaving no time for little Charity. Kyla continues insisting that she did not murder her husband, Charity's father, and that she had been framed, but it didn't matter what the truth was, because the relationship between mother and daughter remained strained. As the years went by, Charity focused on her education, eventually graduating from high school with honors. But in spite of her achievements, the love she craved from her mother was still missing. Beneath her calm exterior, she was hiding a secret. The pressure, the loss of her father, and the years of loneliness finally caught up to her, and she desperately looked for a way to silence the noise around her. For the next 4 years, Charity would struggle with an addiction to drugs, but at age 18, she decided to start fighting back and got clean. With a new lease on life, Charity got back on her feet and obtained a university degree in family development psychology. Her quest for purpose grew even stronger when she found out she was pregnant with a baby boy. Then and there, a new chapter had begun. Paris was born, and later, her baby girl, Ella. Even though motherhood gave Charity a second chance, she was never able to fully move on and heal from the trauma she went through as a young girl. The relationship between Charity and her own mom, Kyla, remained complicated, and the pain caused by her father's death echoed throughout the years. Now, the same pain is back and stronger than ever. Decades later, on the night of February 4th, 2007, as she kisses Ella's forehead for the last time before the little girl gets taken away in a body bag. Hours after Ella's body is taken away for examination, Charity sits in the back of the cop car and waits anxiously as they pull up to the police station. The tension is palpable, and she doesn't know what to expect. Once they arrive, she's led into an interrogation room, and now, the first time since Ella's death, she sees her son, Paris, standing at the far end of the room.
And when I saw him, the only thing I felt was so happy to see my child. Because he was the only one left. I started hugging him and just cried forever.
At its core, Windows amplifies human ingenuity. It's made to work in rhythm with people, with security built in, not bolted on.
And then I realized I started hugging him.
Let me know in the comment section if you prefer me to just be on screen and not keep stopping the film and saying my opinions. Because I know some people like commentary and some people don't like commentary. But just let me know in the comments down below, because I won't know unless I'm told.
And just cried forever. And then I realized at some point that he wasn't hugging me back. And that's when everything stopped making sense.
Paris's coldness toward his own mother and his sister's death feels deeply unnerving to Charity. Something is not right at all. As detectives take over and begin investigating, they have no idea how disturbing the crime and Paris really are. That night, at around 10:30 p.m., about 2 hours before the 911 call, the children were at home when Paris suddenly pulled the babysitter aside and convinced her to go home early, claiming that their mom was coming home.
Wow. So it's his fault for sending the babysitter home. I thought originally, but maybe the babysitter wasn't able to stay that long, or maybe she had a lift coming because it's late at night. So I didn't realize that it was down to the boy, Paris, sending the babysitter home. But hey, guys, I should be warmer now. I've got my t-shirt on. I got my jumper on, which you saw on screen, and now I've got my like thick sweat top thing on, and I'm going to feel a bit warmer. I've just put on my glass panel heater, and it says that my bedroom is 10 Celsius, so it's 10 degrees. So that's cold. That's cold. It really is.
Sooner than what was planned, and that at 13 years old, he was responsible enough to take care of Ella until she arrived. Both of these things were untrue. A few minutes later, the two children were left alone in the house. Things quickly escalated.
Abilene 911.
Hello?
Abilene 911, go ahead.
I accidentally killed somebody.
You think you killed somebody?
No, I know I did. I woke up and I was hallucinating.
You were hallucinating?
Yes, and I thought my sister was a demon and I killed her.
Seemingly frantic and in between tears, Paris appeared helpless to the operator. On the other end of the line, she urged the teen boy to perform CPR, a suggestion he initially resisted, insisting it was too late.
What I want you to do is take her off the bed.
No, I know for a fact that she's dead because
Do you want to go ahead and try? It might still help, okay?
No, I don't think it'll help because...
Come on, Paris, work with me.
The operator is forced to plead with him as she believed time was running out for the little girl, but unbeknownst to her, it was already too late.
Paris?
Yes?
Take her off the bed and put her on the floor.
Okay, hold on.
What I want you to do is I want you to put your hands on her chest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And I want you to push 30 times. I want you to count.
The operator continued to guide him through the procedure while waiting for the officers to arrive, but once they did, they found Ella lying face down, meaning there were no signs that anyone performed CPR on her. The entire time Paris had been on the phone, he had only been pretending. He never actually tried to save his sister's life.
How terrible.
I went to see him that night. I was like, I don't believe you anymore. I think you killed your sister on purpose. All of a sudden, he became a completely different person. It's like he no longer had to keep up this act anymore. He looked at me and he said, y'all are so stupid.
What? A 13-year-old boy saying that to his mum. I know kids do rebel against their mum, and a lot of time they try and get away with it. I know I was no snow angel when I was growing up in like foster care, and then when I got back to my mum, I was always having arguments with her, and what annoyed her more when she told me off, she always said, "Stop that bitchy look in your eyes." My eyes are my eyes. I can't help how my eyes look if I'm being told off for something. But luckily, I never turned into a murderer.
He laughed at me.
Growing up, Paris always seemed like a gifted, quiet boy and good-mannered child, caring and looking out for his sister. But now, Charity looks back in horror and wonders if there was more than met the eye with Paris, hints of strange behavior, or clues that he could have been capable of something like this.
That's a bit rough.
Paris, what is your problem? People that
He is a bit rough with the baby, I must admit.
have had siblings, they tussle, they wrestle.
Oh,
Sometimes you
look.
have to pull them apart. 95% of the time, they got along well.
But despite any issue she had with Paris, she never thought he could ever harm his little sister. February 10th, 2007. Ella's funeral is being held at a local church.
Oh, bless.
Family, friends, and members of the community gather to say goodbye, to remember a beautiful little girl gone far too soon.
Look at her.
Ella wanted to be a singer. I don't really know what to say at a time like this because Ella, she was a pistol. And she always said what was ever on her mind. She brought life into everybody.
The small town of Abilene, Texas, is in complete shock. 4-year-old Ella Bennett's horrific murder made no sense. Charity doesn't know what to do. Not only did she lose her daughter, but her son is the one incarcerated for the murder. While struggling with her grief, all eyes are on her. To the community, it was Charity's fault anything like this had ever happened. It was her fault for creating a monster.
I remember people discussing what kind of books did Paris read and what kind of video games did he play. I believe Charity got the brunt of that, because even if it's a book that he's reading, well, who got him the book? And even if it's a video game that he's playing, well, who allowed him to play that game?
Charity took a lot of heat for her situation. People were very cruel to her. She'd be in a shock. Oh, you're the mother that, oh, your son, you know, and
In the midst of the community's criticism, Charity was broken. Her first love.
I think I would have moved out of town, because once people got something in their heads, it doesn't go away that easy. She can't do anything other than get law enforcement to read out a press statement saying that it was Paris and nothing to do with the mother, and Paris had sent the babysitter home. So I really feel for her, I really do.
Paris just took the life of her second love, Ella. She feels as though she's lost both her children, but the reality is, Paris is still alive, and she is still his mother, despite the cruel betrayal. But just like everyone in the town, Charity never saw this coming. Charity needs answers. She needs to know what's wrong with her son to ensure she gets justice for her daughter.
I had a psychopath checklist youth version administered to Paris and then reevaluated. His assessor told me, you deserve to know that your son is a sociopath.
But everything only gets harder once Charity starts preparing for the trial. With her 4-year-old Ella dead and her only living child being the one to take her life, she has to face the fact that by being there for each of her children, she risks failing the other.
When I would go talk to a district attorney, I had to be Ella's mother. When I went to talk to a defense attorney, I had to be Paris's mother. And if I tried to put Paris and Ella together in my brain, I really got close to insanity.
The trial begins nearly a month after the tragic event. The messiness only worsens when she finds herself standing in the middle of the courtroom.
At one point, sat in the middle because I can't choose sides.
You can't, can
They're
you,
both
really?
my children.
Deep inside, Charity faces the reality that there's nothing she can do to bring Ella back. She realizes that she must make one of the most difficult choices she could as a mother, and in that moment, she chooses to stand by Paris's side, refusing to abandon him. But now, she doesn't.
See, if I was in that, I don't know till I was in that situation, but if I had a child that killed one of my other children, I don't think I could stand by them. I really can't. I would just basically say to him, you've done the crime, you've got to take the consequences now. And you may not get out for a very long time. And then when he is released, he might be on special probations, like an ankle tag, and checking in daily and doing so much community work. But Charity's brave for going to stand by his Paris. But I don't think, personally, it's a good idea, especially the way he used to talk to his mother as well. So that is only going to get worse.
See him as the innocent boy she once raised, but as the murderer he has become. He needs to be accountable for his actions, and she decides to love him in a new way, not trying to save him from justice, but making sure he faces it and gets psychiatric help.
After Paris killed his sister, I was not trying to get Paris off. I wanted to get Paris help.
On August 15th, 2007, after months of trial, Paris pleads guilty to capital murder in juvenile court. He's given the maximum sentence for a juvenile, 40 years. With Paris now spending most of his adult life in prison, Charity makes a promise.
I told him that I was always going to love him no matter what. And then I also promised him that I was always going to do the best job I could to be his mother.
For as long as Charity could remember, her life had been marked by tragedy, but now she chooses a different path. she chooses to heal by facing the truth.
I'm tired of the history repeating itself. I have been able to forgive Paris for the worst.
Sorry about the advert, guys. You won't let me skip it till after like 5 seconds.
Thing imaginable, but I'm never going to be comfortable with it. In order to have my own sense of peace, to have integrity, it's time to stop the pattern.
Now, Charity is determined to support other families going through trauma.
The night that Ella died, I made her a promise that something meaningful would come out of her
We
death.
nearly finished this one.
So I set up the Ella Foundation to prevent violence by sharing our story.
Charity is an advocate for children's mental illness rehabilitation, speaking loudly about getting proper help and support for kids that might be heading down the wrong path due to an unmanaged mental illness. She does everything in her power to make sure that what happened to her family never happens to anyone ever again. Ella's memory continues to heal the wounds of tragedy that defined the Bennetts for nearly half a century, and through Charity's voice, Ella continues to offer a second chance to families who have lost hope in healing.
You're right that it will never bring Ella back, but it does keep Ella alive. I can't change Paris today, but maybe by doing this, I can help with changing somebody else's child.
Well, what do you think of that then? Let me just stop sharing that one. Just come back onto my StreamYard. So yeah, so what do you think of that, guys, eh? I don't know if I did an image file for them. Bear with. Yeah, so there's the picture of him now. I believe he's in like his 30s. I think I had another news one to play you. That wasn't it. Was that it? Yeah, that might be one of them. Right, so this one is Paris Bennett, the 13-year-old psychopath, killer, and genius. So I believe this is from a psychic's point of view on this. Let's go to StreamYard. Remove that. Add to stage. Let me see which one it is. It's got to be top one, that one. Right. I'll play this and then I'll do it full screen for you. It's gone. Oh no, that's chit chat beforehand.
Charity Bennett, and despite her then 13-year-old son, Paris, sexually assaulting and violently murdering his 4-year-old sister, Ella, in an attempt to hurt his mother, Charity still insists she can't turn her back on her son and loves him irrespectively, despite his heinous crime. Every professional account that I have reviewed in looking at this case has concluded that Paris was a psychopath. But in this video, I want to add my own personal observations and clarify a couple of facts about juvenile psychopathy. I also want to add my 2 cents on the sentence that Paris was given, a sentence of up to 40 years in prison. And he is eligible for parole in 2027, which really is not that far away. So I'll make some comments on that shortly too. Now, also, before I start, a bit of a disclaimer that some of the details of this case are absolutely horrible. They are violent.
Let me just stop her a minute. So Paris is due out sometime next year. I will try and make a mental note to watch it. Maybe I'll put it in the calendar because I got one for next year to see what, when he's out and keep an eye on his name in the news. So it's interesting he was being called a psychopath at such a young age. I don't know when psychopathic things can affect children, but I always like to get different views from different people on that, because one person may say he's a psychopath and another person may say something totally different. So I hope you like this one. This one says Paris Bennett, the 13-year-old psychopath, killer and genius, plus the 911 call, no ads. So we can breathe a bit one on this one. I don't like ads in programs.
And they
But oops, oh gosh, what have I done? Oh, there we go. But before I sort of like stop talking, because I'm going to try not to talk too much through this one, can you do me a favor by clicking like and sharing this video, because it helps to get in the algorithms to be shared more widely, because we need to give the voice to the voiceless. And by clicking like, you're doing this for Ella. You're doing it for that little girl who lost her life. And that, so, and if you can put in the comments where you're from, I'm always interested to know where everyone's from. Right, let's get on with it. I'm gonna try and get it bigger for you. Try and find the thing. It's still not full screen. She actually playing. A minute. I don't think she's moving. Bear with me a minute. Trying to find her.
are distressing. I won't be going in.
Stop her a minute. I've got one. Oh, here we go. Let me see if I'm sharing the right one. Bear with me. I don't think I'm sharing the right one to you guys. Let's take this one off. At this stage, I've had myself again. Share. Stop sharing that screen and share a new screen. That's one with the YouTube thing on it. This is the one. Sorry, for the other one, I could hear her talking, but she was stationary. Her lips weren't moving.
Had gone to bed, telling the babysitter that they would both be fine. For reasons I do not know and cannot explain, the babysitter did leave that night, and this decision would prove to be fatal for young Ella and life-changing for the entire Bennett family. We know that after watching some violent pornography, Paris took a kitchen knife from his home, went to his sister's room where he raped, strangled, beat and stabbed Ella 17 times in a manner that would inflict as much pain as possible on both his sister, but more so his mother. Whilst he stabbed his sister 17 times, we do know that some of these wounds were slow, shallow and methodical, more jabs and punctures than a deep, frenzied attack that was designed to kill quickly. This tells us that Paris wanted to overpower. He wanted to intimidate, induce fear and immense suffering to prolong the violence and the brutality of his crime. Now, we are talking about a 13-year-old here with his 4-year-old sister, and that's pretty hard to get your head around. Paris then went and made a short call to one of his school friends before phoning 911 and confessing to the crime. Elements of that emergency call can be heard here.
Abilene 911.
Hello?
Abilene 911, go ahead.
I was hallucinating.
You're hallucinating?
Yes. I woke up and I thought she was a demon and I killed her. Mm-hmm.
Now, what's your sister's name?
Her name is Ella. Ella Bennett.
How old is Ella?
4.
She's 4 years old? How old are you?
13.
Is she bleeding anywhere?
Yes, she's bleeding all over the bed. Because I stabbed her.
What did you stab her with?
A knife.
Okay, where'd you stab her?
Lots of places.
I want you to start CPR, okay? What I want you to do is take her off the bed
No, I know for a fact that she's dead because
Do you want to go ahead and try? It might still help, okay?
No, I don't think it'll help because...
Come on, Paris, work with me.
I know I stabbed her lots of times. Okay, she's on the floor, but I can't stay here because she's all bloody and
Paris,
stuff.
what I want you to do is I want you to put your hands on her chest. Okay, and I want you to push 30 times. I want you to count.
Okay.
All the way to 30, and then blow 2 breaths in her mouth. Okay?
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Harris? We put it down.
Now, in that 911 call, the operator instructs Paris to do CPR on his sister. You can hear him initially resist, saying it's not going to help, that she's already dead. He knows that she's deceased. But then you hear him comply with a bit of persuasion from the operator, and you hear him counting to the compressions. But these compressions, we now know, he never performed. He just pretended to be distressed, and he pretended to cry, and he pretended to do CPR. Evidence showed the sister did not receive any assistance from Paris, and Paris himself later even admitted that he wasn't even in the same room as Ella's body when he was pretending to count the compressions over the phone. Paris was, of course, convicted of this gruesome crime and sentenced to 40 years, and that's where he remains today, behind bars in a Texas state prison. Now, if that isn't crazy enough on its own, there are some other critical facts to this story that require mentioning if we're to try and understand how something like this can happen. The first is that Paris is what we might call a genius. He has an IQ of 142. Now, to get an idea of how rare an IQ of that magnitude is, let me show you this graph. You can see that most of us, almost 68% of us to be more accurate, are going to fall into the average range, somewhere between 85 and 115 IQ points. However, almost all of us, 95% of us, will have an IQ somewhere between 70 and 130. Then at the lower end of the spectrum, we have those who we consider severely cognitively or intellectually impaired, and they'll have an IQ below 70, and they comprise less than 2.5% of the population. But then up the other end, we have those who are the geniuses. Or an IQ of 142 that Paris had would occur in less than 0.25% of the population.
Wow.
So he was incredibly intelligent as far as intelligence is measured by contemporary IQ tests. But we also have another quotient, an EQ, emotional quotient, which is a measure of one's emotional intelligence, which some have said is a better predictor of success than IQ alone. And it is essentially a measure of how one manages, regulates, and responds through their awareness and experience of personal emotions and the emotions of others, which we call empathy. Whilst I can find no formal report of Paris's emotional quotient or his EQ, it's pretty easy to conclude that he felt emotions very differently from most people, despite being highly articulate and capable of discussing emotions. His ability to actually feel them and convey any true understanding or experience of authentic emotion is severely lacking. So whilst he has a high IQ, he has quite a low EQ. Now, this poses an interesting juxtaposition in many ways. Paris has a very high intelligence, so some of his cognitive conclusions about himself, his actions and his motives are very insightful and very eloquent, albeit severely disturbed and without emotion. But take, for instance, his self-assessment of his own mental state. Paris says he is not insane. He takes full responsibility for his actions and that he is not mentally ill. When Paris's mother described how she knew two Parises, one that she loved dearly and another Paris that was capable of monstrous things, Paris responded. He said, "See, I don't see it like that, because everybody has within them that capacity for violence, and given the right set of circumstances, you can act on that capacity. I held grudges. I was passive aggressive. I had poor empathy skills, and all that led up to what I did." Paris also said, "There's no clear demarcation between good Paris and bad Paris. There's just Paris." Now that's both insightful and chilling. And to be fair, I think Paris has expressed significant accuracy and condemnation with that statement that he made. He is essentially saying that he is capable of both good and evil acts, and under certain conditions and systems, he can be tipped one way or another. He isn't ascribing blame to anything or anyone else. He's taking responsibility and he's acknowledging that he, or any of us for that matter, can possess both good and evil, but he just chose to succumb to the evil side. And when we look at earlier pictures of Paris as a young child, we see him playing apparently happily and normally with his younger sister. You can see the light and the playfulness in his face and moments of genuine happiness in some of these pictures and home videos. But when you take a closer look, I can also see signs of a child experimenting with controlled and considered aggressive tendencies. Here he grabs his baby sister's head, and I can see how part of him wants to continue shaking her.
Yeah, exactly.
He wants to hurt her more. He wants to push the boundaries, but in this instance, Mum is there and Mum redirects.
Hey. Take that in a bag.
I personally think in this instance that Paris needed a bit more than just gentle redirection, but Mum probably just saw child's play and was clearly unaware of the machinations of Paris's mind in those moments. But here we see Paris, good Paris, evil Paris, no demarcation, as Paris says, that's just him. But Paris was more bad than I think Paris realises. Whilst I do agree with him that we are all capable of both good and bad acts, the difference here is Paris is without a conscience. He's without guilt. He's without a moral compass. The thing that tells us, wait, this is not just bad. This is way off course, and this requires a complete calibration and rebuild. So Paris was highly intelligent.
Yeah.
He was capable of manipulation and mental calculations way beyond his chronological age. He presumably used those devious skills and that intelligence to persuade the babysitter to go home that fateful night, and to also convince his mother that there was nothing untoward about some of those more aggressive, boyish behaviours that we just saw. But did Paris know what he was doing? Well, with an IQ of that level, I would have to say yes, he did. But let's dig down a little more into this case, because there are some more sinister and intriguing elements in the familial history of this family. This was not Charity's first experience with murder. Before she became the mother of a murderer, she had been the daughter of one. Well, technically she was the daughter of a mother accused of murder, the murder of her own father. Charity was just 6 years old when police found the body of her father, who had been shot several times in the head, and police thought this looked like an execution. Charity's mother, Kyla Bennett, soon became the prime suspect in the murder of Charity's father. And although Charity's parents had been separated for some time, they had remarried just 57 hours before the murder during a trip to Las Vegas. Kyla stood to take over the family's lucrative trucking business if anything happened to her husband. Now, is that a coincidence? Maybe, but I'm not a big fan of coincidences. Police eventually charged Kyla Bennett with hiring a hitman to kill her husband, but a jury later acquitted her. 10 years after that tragedy, when Charity was around 17 years old, she became a teenager and she was hooked on heroin, and her mother kicked her out of the home. Charity was left to defend for herself, and not long after, Charity was clinging to life, contemplating suicide by overdosing on heroin. But before she conceded to death, she learned of her pregnancy at just age 18, her pregnancy with Paris. Paris's father didn't hang around long, but we do know that the father had paranoid schizophrenia and had reported experiencing both auditory and visual hallucinations. And despite all these obvious challenges at her young age, Charity is quoted as saying, "Paris changed everything. He saved my life." We know later he would also destroy it. But at 13, we technically can't diagnose Paris as a psychopath. If a child is going to become a psychopath, we will see clear violation of the rights of others. We saw that with Paris. We'll possibly see a child hurting animals. And we know that Paris did engage in that kind of behaviour. There was a time where he was caught throwing frogs off a very high balcony and splatting them onto the cement below.
That's not very nice.
His mother said that she came out, caught him and reprimanded him for this. And they went down to see if any of the frogs had survived. And some had and others had not. And she said that there was one frog that was clearly badly injured and she wanted to put the frog out of its misery. But
that is not very nice, killing animals. I mean, as she said, you can tell their state of mind if they're prepared to hurt and kill animals, what their next steps will be.
Paris didn't want to kill it. And my understanding is that some have suggested that this means Paris had some compassion or some recognition of the animal's suffering. But I tend to think, given the later nature of his crime, that it was more a warped way of allowing the animal to continue in its suffering. Now, I don't know, but point being, we know that he did hurt animals, so he had that indicator as well. Other indicators include lying, and he lied to people. The babysitter is a good example. Manipulation, selfishness, sneakiness, and a desire to hurt others for his own pleasure. And here is an eerie video where we hear Paris say something rather unusual to his mother. Take a look.
Mom, what's your least favorite word?
My what?
Your least favorite word. Or sentence.
I don't know.
Kill Charity's children.
Here.
Kill Charity's children.
Wow.
Kill Charity's children.
Here.
So that video that you just saw, and
now, do you think he's possibly can hear voices in his head? And that because he's just come out with it so calmly, and you know, it's just a normal scene. You know, mum's bath and little girl in the bath, and he's just walking around. But it's his way he walks around is a bit strange. And then to say kill Parish's children, Charity's children. Now, I would have set alarm bells off as soon as I heard that, and I would have started seeking help straight away for this.
And the other indicators that I've just mentioned, the shaking of his sister's head, the animal herding, the manipulation, all those things suggest that Paris perhaps really was a psychopath in the making. And in this instance, I'm actually comfortable allowing the term psychopath to be used, irrespective of the semantics and the technicalities involved with children. Paris has shown no remorse. He shows an ongoing disregard for the feelings of others, especially including his own mother, and a complete indifference to suffering and to punishment. All very much indicators that he was and is and will remain a psychopath, and that he is very unlikely to change. From an interview in prison with Piers Morgan, he says he loves his sister. He uses present tense, but he's unable to explain what he means. He still says he wanted to hurt his mother because he felt she left him alone and neglected him too much. And maybe she did. We know she did have a drug relapse, and we know that she worked long and late hours, and that Paris was, sometimes at least, left alone and with the responsibility of caring for his sister. But we also know he had a mother who genuinely loved him and wanted nothing but the best for her children. And for whatever reason, Charity still loves him. Would Paris have become a psychopath and engaged in this gruesome crime if it were not for his dysfunctional?
But when he comes out next year in 2027, obviously while he's inside, he's on medications. But what's to say he's going to carry on with those medications when he comes out and not to take them when he comes out? I can see this guy relapsing, and I don't know what his behaviour has been since he's been inside the jail. But if he's done anything in jail wrong, he's had any bad instances, I would be less inclined to let him out because he'd be a danger to society.
Problematic and somewhat neglectful upbringing? My answer is, if it wasn't this set of circumstances that triggered his psychopathy, then it probably would have been something else. It was there, it was dormant, and it was just waiting to surface, as Paris himself says, under the right set of circumstances. So do I think Paris would kill again if he's released? And I hate to say this because I'm usually such a big advocate of rehabilitation for children, but I absolutely do believe that Paris will kill again. Yeah, and his mother is probably still a primary target for him. His mother has a third child now, a young boy by the name of Phoenix. And I would dare say that this child would also now be a target for Paris's.
If he ever goes home, which I can see that happening when he comes out next year, I wouldn't leave him for 1 second near that child, and I wouldn't allow him to touch him or anything. And I know it's hard, you can't keep an eye on someone 24/7, but I'd dot cameras all around the house, like covert ones, so he doesn't realise he's being recorded. But I would be really severely concerned about her third child if Paris comes out of prison next year. So, I'm hoping Mum doesn't let him anywhere near that child.
Hatred, unforgiveness, jealousy, and psychopathy. As I mentioned earlier, Paris seems to be very insightful. He's clearly intelligent and relatively accurate in his depiction of his own behaviour and the MO of his crime. Piers Morgan asked Paris about whether he had changed in prison and whether his mother is right to still have fears about her safety if he were to be released. And this is Paris's reply. Let's just say I was released tomorrow. No parole or mandatory supervision or anything. I wouldn't hurt anybody. I have no interest in coming back to prison. Now, a narcissist might say something like that and mean it, because a narcissist is all about their own self-interest. Their self is the priority. But Paris isn't a narcissist. He's a psychopath, and he has no regard for the rights of others. So I'm not sure I believe that statement at all. Piers Morgan then asked Paris if he has learned to cope with what he did to Ella whilst he's been in prison. And Paris replied rather flatly, dealing with it would involve a lot of introspection, and this isn't an environment that's ideal for that. Well, I would think prison isn't an ideal environment. What else have you really got to do but self-reflect and engage in introspection? Look, Paris Bennett is a psychopath. He is a killer and he is a genius. He's in prison for a maximum of only 40 years. Even if his parole is granted in 2027, which I highly doubt that it will be, he will still come up for parole again. And worst case scenario, he'll be released in 2047 when he'll be 53 years of age. As hard as it is for me to give up on a child, even a child killer, in this case, I am sorry to say, but Paris is where he belongs, and I have no reason to think 40 years in prison will do anything other than make this individual more angry, more resentful, and more inclined to kill again. There is a saying that I have used in my clinic 1,000 times, and it goes like this: there are no bad children, only bad influences. But Paris might be that one child who is the exception to that rule. What do you think?
Yeah, so what do you guys think? I mean, I can see him getting really jealous of his mum's new child, and that, because he won't be able to have his mum all to himself now. But she has stood by him, so maybe he won't do anything. That's what I'm praying anyway. But I shall certainly be keeping an eye out on the news for his name. I don't think I got anything else to show you. Saw the Piers Morgan one. Don't need to see that interview. What's this one? Just bear with me. We'll just play a little bit of this. A minute. Where is this one thing? A minute. Let me see if I can get out stage. A minute. Just bear with me a minute. Let me just see which one it is. Just need to close a few things down. Right, so it's that one. Bear with me, guys. Let's cancel that and start going. Oh, maybe that's the one.
Disappeared. On October 10th, 1993, Paris Lee Bennett was born, and Charity was on her own. No marriage,
I can't find it for myself.
no partner, no father for her son.
Right one for you guys.
Just Charity and her baby boy.
Just play a little bit of this.
One day,
that has
out of
been
nowhere,
an hour now.
He came to visit his son. Paris was just 17 months old. What Charity didn't know was that this visit might be their last. Paris's father had just been diagnosed with
like I said, I like to get different perspectives from different angles. But there's a lot of differences, so I'll just play this one. I won't play the full video, and it depends how good it gets.
Paranoid schizophrenia, suffering from terrifying audio and visual hallucinations. He wanted to see his son one final time before his mind slipped away completely. Paris thinks he never saw his dad, but he did, that day, for the first and last time.
Oh, bless.
For the next 8 years, it was just Charity and Paris. She poured everything into raising him, and by all accounts, Paris was an extraordinary child. Bright, affectionate, well-behaved. Teachers called him gifted. His IQ would later be tested at 141, genius level. As Paris grew older, Charity tried again at love. She wanted to give Paris a stable family. She married Ella's father and felt like she was finally in heaven. Her son had a father, and her life finally felt complete. A year later, on March 5th, 2002, she was blessed with the most precious gift of all, a baby girl, Ella. Ella's father loved her.
Ella's father.
He held her in his arms, swam with her, and always kept her close to his heart. But beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect father, there were problems. Problems with alcohol. Ella's father's drinking habits got worse.
Oh, dear.
The relationship started falling apart. And then came the incident that ended everything. Charity got a phone call. Ella's father was in the hospital. A state trooper had pulled him over for drunk driving and asked him to step out of the car. He refused. The officer reached into the vehicle to remove him, and Ella's father popped the clutch. He dragged that state trooper 75 feet up an exit ramp.
Wow.
The officer shot him through the leg to stop the vehicle. When Charity heard what happened, exhaled sharply. She made a decision. She was done with love. She would not drag her children through this chaos. She filed for divorce. Once again, Charity was on her own. 2 children, 2 fathers are gone. But she refused to give up. In 2004, she moved back to Texas with Paris and Ella, settling in Abilene with her mother to get the support she needed while rebuilding their lives. Paris finally had a little sister now. From the very first moment, Paris seemed absolutely devoted to her. Ella adored her big brother. To her, Paris was her hero, her protector, her whole world. The 3 of them were finally happy. But then how does a brother who seems to genuinely love his sister become her killer?
Maybe it's down to hormones. You know, kids' hormones changes like on the spin of a knife, and he can go from happy and being placid one minute and to this monster the next. But I like doing several stories because not every story you see on the same topic is exactly the same. I just wish they didn't use AI voices.
The answer lies in something that happened 1 year before the murder. Something almost no one talks about. Something that should have been a warning. In 2006, when Paris and Ella were 12 and 3 years old, Charity relapsed. She had been clean for almost 12 years now, created a stable home for her children, and seemed to have everything under control. But addiction doesn't work that way. The stress of single motherhood, 2 failed relationships, financial pressures, and the weight of it all became too much. Charity turned back to her teenage habits, cocaine. At first, she thought she could hide it. She thought she could manage it, maintaining the facade of the loving mother she desperately wanted to be. But Paris knew. Children somehow always know. And something in him began to shift. The affectionate, gifted boy who had been his mother's pride and joy started to change. His grandmother, Kyla Bennett, recalls how Ella's birth had already shifted Paris's outlook.
We knew, all of us knew, that there was something wrong with Paris. Charity knew, I knew. From the time
Paris was an artistic kid from the very beginning. He used to draw his emotions. He began drawing again, not those innocent sketches of a creative child, but something darker, something disturbing.
it would bleed, or he had thrown glass all over the place. I guess he was screeching for help, but we just didn't pay any attention.
The signs started getting more dangerous. Sometimes, he would just pound his head against the wall until it bled, or had thrown glass all over the room. But still, his mother and grandmother thought he would be fine and change over time. His behavior also started to subtly change towards Ella. But then came the question that should have gave a final warning to Charity.
Mom, what's your least favorite word?
I don't know.
Kill Charity's children?
Here.
Even this was not enough for Charity to realize that he needed help, that he might be suffering from a trauma. The incident that opened Charity's eyes was still yet to happen. 17th July, 2006. One day, Paris grabbed a kitchen knife and bolted out the door. When Charity and her mother finally tracked him down, Paris was waving the knife at Charity as if he wanted to kill her. His grandmother managed to grab the knife from behind, and Charity wrapped her arms around him. She recalled the incident. He just collapsed into this heap on the floor. We didn't know what was wrong with him. Paris, a 12-year-old kid, had threatened his mother. Finally, Charity made a decision that seemed reasonable at the time. She admitted Paris to Red River Hospital, a nearby psychiatric facility, hoping finally to get answers about what was happening to her son. She was desperate for help. Desperate for someone to tell her what was wrong with Paris. But from the moment Paris was admitted, something felt wrong. The doctors barely spoke to her. When she called for updates, she got vague responses. When she asked about his diagnosis, she was told they were still evaluating. Days passed, then a week. No clear answers, no treatment plan, no communication. Charity grew increasingly frustrated. These were supposed to be experts. They had her 12-year-old son, a boy who had just threatened his family with a knife, and they were telling her nothing. After just 1 week, Charity made a decision. If they weren't going to help, she would bring him home and figure it out herself. She had no idea that decision would cost Ella her life. Because what Charity didn't know was that the answers she'd been begging for already existed. They were written down, locked away in one file. A file she wouldn't see until more than a year later, after Ella was already gone. After his discharge, the family needed distance from the trauma. They moved across town to Abilene's west side. A fresh start, they hoped. One thing Paris said in an interview held me back during my research.
My grandmother's always been a very cold and collected woman. And I'm the same way.
Paris's psychopathy, his chilling detachment, his tendency toward violence. It wasn't something that suddenly appeared. It was inherited. It was in his genes because he wasn't the first murderer in his family. Long before him, another killer bore the family name. The one person Charity hated the most. Paris's grandmother, Kyla Bennett. To understand Paris's darkness, we need to go back 27 years before he was born. But six-year-old Charity was at school when her world fell apart. Someone murdered her father in their family home. James Robert Bennett Jr., also known as Bobby Bennett, was found in the foyer, shot multiple times in the chest, heart, and back of the head. Bobby Bennett wasn't just anyone. He came from a wealthy Atlanta family with a lucrative trucking business. When Bobby Bennett was murdered, someone stood to inherit everything. His wife, Kyla Bennett. Here's something that made investigators immediately suspicious. Bobby and Kyla Bennett had been separated. Their marriage was over. They were living apart. But then, just 57 hours before Bobby's murder, something strange happened. Less than 3 days later, Bobby Bennett was dead. And Kyla? She was now the sole heir to the family's lucrative trucking business and Bobby Bennett's estate. Prosecutors smelled a setup. Authorities charged Kyla Bennett with hiring a hitman to murder her husband. The trial was sensational and widely covered. Prosecutors presented testimony that in the months before her husband's murder, Kyla had given $50,000 for arranging her husband's killing with a part-time truck driver. The case seemed solid. The motive was clear. The timing was suspicious. But on July 9, 1980, after deliberation, the jury returned their verdict. Not guilty. Kyla Bennett walked free. She kept the business. She kept the money. She kept custody of 6-year-old Charity. And that little girl? She would now be raised by the woman most people, including Charity herself, believed murdered her father. Fast forward to 2017. 37 years after the trial. Kyla Bennett agreed to be interviewed and said something disturbing about her husband's death.
I had to work to get my company back on its feet. I had to fight to keep my contracts with the government. And I had a child to raise. And I didn't have time to sit around and brood over spilt milk.
Wait, did she just refer to her husband's murder as spilled milk? Whew. She also said something that might just sound like a confession.
All manipulate each other. We're all spoiled rotten. My other daughter, Caitlin, I don't think she's quite as good. She didn't have as good a teacher because I don't do it so much anymore. I don't have a company to manipulate. I don't have drivers to manipulate. And I don't have a jury to manipulate.
Kyla joked about manipulating the jury. She casually joked about manipulating a murder trial, despite evidence of her guilt. Charity believes her mother was responsible for the murder of her father. Imagine being that child. Your father is murdered. Your mother is arrested, tried for his murder, and acquitted. But deep down, even as a child, you know the truth. You're being raised by the person who killed your dad. So as a teenager, Charity did something drastic. She started using drugs. Now you know why she had this teenage habit. It doesn't excuse her actions, but it does explain the pain that shaped her. Not because she wanted to get high, but because she wanted her mother to notice her, to care, to do something. Kyla didn't care. She showed no interest. By the time Charity was 17, she was strung out on heroin. And what did her mother do? She kicked her daughter out, gave her $100 and told her she could either use it to find help or to score drugs and find a place to overdose. This is the woman who helped Charity raise Paris and Ella. When Charity moved back to Abilene in 2004, Kyla Bennett was married 8 times. 8 different marriages. One of those husbands ended up dead, shot execution style. She was tried for his murder. What happened to the others? The information about them is widely not known. One thing the mother and daughter had in common: neither of them ever truly knew how to live within a marriage. Charity also. 2 brief marriages, both was just hardly a year in total. Patterns repeat. Trauma passes down. And Paris? He was watching, learning, absorbing it all. Let's trace what Paris inherited from his family. From his biological father, paranoid schizophrenia. A mind that saw things that weren't there. A genetic predisposition to mental illness. From his grandmother Kyla, psychopathy, coldness and the ability to manipulate and lie. From his mother, trauma, addiction, instability. A boy with an IQ of 141. Genius-level intelligence combined with inherited darkness. By February 2007, Paris was 13 years old. 7 months had passed since the knife incident. 7 months since Red River Hospital. 7 months in their new home on the west side of Abilene. On the surface, everything seemed normal. Paris was back in school. Ella was happy. Charity was working long shifts at a restaurant, Buffalo Wild Wings, doing her best to keep things together. But that night changed their lives forever. February 4th, 2007. Super Bowl Sunday. Millions of Americans were gathered around televisions, eating wings, watching the game. For restaurants like Buffalo Wild Wings, Super Bowl Sunday is the busiest night of the year. Charity had to work late that night. Before leaving, she hired a babysitter for Paris and Ella, a 21-year-old college student who had watched the kids before. Everything seemed normal. Paris seemed fine. Ella was her usual energetic self. Charity kissed her kids goodbye and left for work, having no idea she would never see Ella alive again. For the next few hours, the babysitter watched the kids. Paris stayed in his room. Ella played with her toys. Paris spent hours online searching for and watching violent pornography, specifically S&M content and torture scenes. He also searched for snuff films. Around 10 p.m., the Super Bowl was still going. The babysitter was probably watching, distracted by the game. Paris came out of his room and somehow convinced her to leave. We don't know exactly what he said. Did he tell her Charity was coming home early? Did he say his grandmother was on her way? But whatever story Paris told, it worked. A 13-year-old boy successfully manipulated a 21-year-old adult into abandoning her babysitting job and leaving 2 children home alone. Remember, Paris is a genius. He knows how to lie convincingly. Now it was just Paris and Ella. For the next hour and a half, we didn't know exactly what Paris was doing. What we do know is that sometime before 11:30 p.m., Paris entered Ella's room and did something almost unbearable to describe. Paris assaulted his 4-year-old sister and stabbed her 17 times. And then Paris did something that reveals just how cold and calculated he really is. He didn't call 911. He didn't call his mother. He didn't panic. He called a friend from school. Yes, you heard that right. He talked to a friend for straight 6 minutes, maybe deciding what to do next. What story to make up before calling 911, or maybe just ran away from the house. What they talked about during those 6 minutes has never been revealed. Even the friend's name was kept out of all police records to protect the privacy of a minor. But one thing is clear. Paris wasn't in shock. He wasn't panicking. He was in complete control. And he wanted to share what he'd done with someone before calling authorities. After talking to his friend, Paris waited 4 minutes. Then he made his strategic call. The one that would complete his plan.
Abilene 911.
Hello?
Abilene 911, go ahead.
I accidentally killed somebody.
You think you killed somebody?
No, I know I did. I woke up and I was hallucinating.
You were hallucinating?
Yes, and I thought my sister was a demon and I killed her.
I want you to start CPR, okay? What I want you to do is take her off the bed.
No, I know for a fact that she's dead because
do you want to go ahead and try? It might still help, okay?
No, I don't think it'll help because...
Come on, Paris, work with me.
I know I stabbed her lots of times.
Okay. Paris?
Yes?
Take her off the bed and put her on the floor.
Okay, hold on. Please don't hang up.
I'm not hanging up on you.
I thought she was a demon.
Okay.
Okay, she's on the floor, but I can't stay here because she's all bloody and
Paris,
stuff.
what I want you to do is I want you to put your hands on her chest, okay? And I want you to push 30 times. I want you to count.
Okay.
All the way to 30, and then blow 2 breaths in her mouth, okay?
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Paris? We put it down.
Would you believe me if I told you that Paris faked those cries on the 911 call? He never even tried to give Ella CPR. When the dispatcher told him to move her to the floor to perform CPR, he never did that. When police arrived at the home, she was still lying on the bed, covered in blood, untouched. And that story he told about seeing his sister as a pumpkin-headed demon, that was a complete lie. His friend might have helped him come up with this hallucination story, and surprisingly, it worked. Everyone believed it. After all, his father had a history of severe mental illness, so it seemed possible that Paris was starting to see things too. Then, Charity got a call at her office.
They told me that my daughter had been hurt.
Stage. Yeah, so what do you think about that? If you can write it in the comments, I appreciate that. And like I said, if you can like and subscribe, you're giving a voice to that baby Emily. You know, she's voiceless at the moment, and we need to give voice to the children. I really hope when Paris comes out next year, it's in February. I was looking on the news. I really hope he doesn't do anything. You know, 11 months' time, he's going to be free. I hope beforehand it goes to a parole and they refuse it, because I really think his mum and her daughter are now at risk, and I think anybody he comes across with is at risk. So I mean, he's probably only acting the goody two shoes in prison because he knows if he does anything really bad, extra time's added onto your sentence. So, you know, we got to give this little girl a voice. I'll just see if I can find her picture again. No, I haven't got a picture. But anyway, we need to give a voice to the voiceless. And I appreciate you all watching this with me. It does mean a lot to me. And it does, sometimes you do need several outlets to put one story together, because one, you know, like from the second one, we never heard half of that as we did in the first one. So once again, thank you for staying with me. Don't forget to like and share. Leave your DNA on that like button, or just press it just to see if it works. See you to the next one.